Babes, I'm wearing black today because we're going to have a serious conversation today. Because if there's one thing we do with ourselves on this page is that we keep it real and we're honest. The truth of the matter is that sometimes it gets overwhelming. Sometimes life happens to us and we do not have the time, the means, or the resources to take care of plants. Sometimes our mental health are not just there and we can't even take care of ourselves, talk less of other plants. And I'm going to categorically say this: every single plant parent will, at one point in their life, struggle with plant burnout. Your collection that once used to give you joy, you look at it and you feel like, oh my God, how did I get into all of this? We all encounter it. It's inevitable. It's bound to happen. It is part of human nature. But one thing about this page is that we're very solution oriented and we're very pragmatic. I always like to prefer a solution whenever I point out a problem. And I also always like to quantify things. So I've come up with practical ways and practical things you can do to help you navigate plant burnout and help you just take off a bit of that stress that comes with gardening and that may potentially lead to burnout. So, babes, let's get to the nitty gritty. The first point is a very powerful message, and we need to get this out of the way. Babes, it is okay to throw away plants.
What?
It is, babes. Do not let anyone guilt trip you. Stop even guilt tripping yourself into feeling like you're being irresponsible, you're being wasteful for throwing away plants. Babe, when push comes to shove, I want you to realize that at the end of the day, it is just a plant. When you have to choose between your mental health and your sanity, your responsibility, those things have to come first before that plant. And also, you can't save every plant. Some of you are trying to be heroes. That plant has a heavy pest infestation. You're trying to save, Madam, throw it away. Throw it away. These are the things that gradually build up and make you feel overwhelmed and make you potentially have that burnout. Another thing that can actually greatly help is if you have like a compost like pile where you keep plants that are declining, you just toss them there. So that way they're not entirely being wasted, but they gradually break down and then you can then add it to a nutrient, an organic nutrient source for your plants that are doing better. And a lot of people will say, okay, why don't you just let go of that plant and give it to somebody else? That's also a possibility. But you also need to consider the fact that not everyone has the resources or the time or even the mental health to actually arrange the logistics behind giving out a plant, packaging it, sending it off for delivery, all of that. And sometimes the easiest way out is just to literally throw that plant away. Okay? All right? Okay. The next point is, and this has to be said, you need to stop collecting plants.
What?
Did you hear what I said? Emphasis on that word collecting. Babes, stop seeing yourself as a plant collector and start seeing yourself as somebody who actually gets plants to curate a space, plants that work for them, plants that work for their lifestyle, for their time, for their schedule, for their climate. You are not a plant collector. Stop trying to collect every philodendron that there is. Stop trying to collect every Hoya that there is. I used to be this person. I used to be the person telling you to avoid. What eventually happens is that you end up with plants that you don't even like and a huge dent in your wallet because you're trying to be a collector. The fact of the matter is that you can never keep up when it comes to collecting plants because these nurseries will continue to pump out different hybrids, different cultivars with very indistinguishable differences. So, babe, stick to plants that you like. Stick to plants that work for your schedule. Stick to plants that work for your time. That way you don't end up with all these plants that you barely even like and then you start feeling overwhelmed. I want you to stop propagating your plants. Stop propagating that plant. Leave it as a singular unit as it is. Some of you are so addicted to propagation. When I look at this plant here, they're like, it has given me two pops, and some of you will just readily separate it. But babes, sometimes you forget that the moment you separate those pops, you already have multiple plants that you have to take care of individually, which has added to your workload. So please, you don't have to separate it. Just leave it. Leave them contained together in one pot, one family unit. You don't have to start separating lives and families. No, leave them contained together. That way, you can water them and care for them all the same, and then you feel less overwhelmed. If you're separating them to eventually sell, or if you're separating them to give them away, fine. But if you're just separating them because you want to separate and you've been conditioned to believe that you have to divide and propagate every plant, girl, please, girlies, you are just adding more unnecessary workload to yourself, and plant burnout is inevitable. So, yeah, please, you don't have to propagate every single time, okay? Please. Thank you. Okay, Base, for this next point, I need you to hold my hand when I say this because it's a reality check, okay? Are you ready? Three, two, one. You don't have to fill up every space with plants.
Oh my God. I can't. Get out.
Don't let go of this hand. Hold it. You don't have to fill up every space with plants.
Oh my God, what is that?
By the way, if you hear any child crying, it is they I don't know what's going on there, but they have a lot of children in the next house. But as I was saying, you don't have to fill up every space with plants. And I used to be this person that if I saw a space, especially if it was an indoor space that had natural light or an outdoor space that I had to be like, oh my god, I had to fill up this whole entire space with plants. I have to make it a jungle. Until I had one of my biggest reality checks in life when my landlord with his lawyer came and said, please, we don't want a jungle in this compound. We don't want a jungle in this compound. Also, for some of us that live in rented spaces and rented homes and shared spaces, the fact of the matter is that plants can complicate things because you're gonna have to move, right? You're gonna have to move until you find your own forever home. As somebody who has had to move with a lot of plants before, oh my goodness gracious, it's not cute. It's not even something I potentially look forward to. So these are things I want you to start bearing in mind. Sometimes let that space breathe. Yes, just put one or two cute plants there and then fill it up with other things like other decor knickknacks, a cute shelf, some books. It doesn't have to turn into a rainforest because it has ample light. You get what I mean? Another thing I need you to start doing and it will greatly help you prevent plant burnout is to focus on plants that can take neglect. Focus on plants that can take neglect. Because, like I said at the start of this video, it's not every time that you are in the mood to take care of plants. Sometimes life happens. That's the reality, babes. We're keeping it real with ourselves. Sometimes life happens. Your mental health is at an all-time low. You're burdened with other responsibilities, you're burdened with work, you have bills to pay. So you don't have the time to garden, you don't have the time to water plants. So it becomes really advantageous if the bulk of your plants are plants that can take those periods of neglect. And this is why a lot of people are now increasingly going into succulent gardening because succulents are obviously very drought tolerant. And this is also why I will never part ways with my aglonemas. Call them basic, I don't care. But they are extremely drought tolerant and they are really, really forgiving of neglect. So you want to build your collection with bearing that in mind, okay? And you really want to stay away from plants that are really needy. If the bulk of your collection is plants that are really needy, like calatheas, girl, you're gonna experience serious burnout. Another thing that will greatly help is that I want you to start rethinking your approach to gardening. Your approach to gardening should be how can I grow beautiful plants while needing to water as minimally as possible? A game changing thought process.
I'm telling you, I have the mind of a master. I have the mind of a mastermind. What's that? I don't know, but I'm so creative like that.
Honestly speaking, like when I first got into plants, I really loved to water plants. I always loved to shower, always loved to water my plants. But then I quickly realized that as you get older, you're burdened with more responsibilities. You're burdened with marriage. You're burdened with children. You're burdened with bills, and you may not have the time or even have the enthusiasm to like water plants as frequently as you used to, which is why more girlies are getting into things like semi-hydro or like self-watering setups. Babes, please do not frown from that. It's something that you should also consider. So lean towards a setup where you can grow beautiful plants with minimal watering. Let that be the thought process. All right. I don't even know what number that we're in right now. We're just going with the flow. We're just going with the flow. Whatever the spirit tells us to talk about, to talk about it. Babes, the next point I need to talk about has been a game changer in my garden and has honestly helped me to maintain my sanity. It is a technique called underplanting. Oh my goodness gracious. I learned this a lot from the succulent girlies and from the outdoor gardening girlies, but I don't know why we don't do or talk about it a lot more in the houseplant community. So basically, underplanting is a technique where you put different types of plants together in the same container. And it may seem simple, but there's a lot of intentionality that goes into it. You're going to have to factor in their growth profile, their height, and also you're going to have to limit yourself to plants that have the same care and watering needs. But outside of that, when you get all of that figured out, oh my goodness gracious, it is a game changer because not only are you saving space, not only are you saving soil, not only are you saving pots, but you're also saving your time, you're saving your energy, you're saving your sanity. Like this thing has, I asked myself, why didn't I do this earlier on in my gardening career? It is not the most beginner friendly thing. You're going to need to have more experience with caring plants and watering plants before you can, dive into it. But once you've mastered it, oh my God, it is the game changer and will really take the weight off and will reduce your chances of, getting burnout. Okay. Babes, I had to save this last point for the last because the environmental girlies are not always happy when I say this, but please, a systemic pesticide, will greatly save your sanity. It will greatly save your sanity and keep you sane and prevent you from having that plant burnout, that pest induced plant burnout. Because what a lot of people do not want to tell you is that the more plants you have, the more pests you're going to encounter. Pests and plants are inevitable. And sometimes, especially when you're dealing with things like trips, those evil creatures, oh my goodness gracious, they can be so hard to get rid of. The one time that I literally almost felt like throwing all my plants away was when I had a trip infestation. And this was what saved me. This, this, there's so much glare from the lights today, but this too, particularly this, was what saved me. So systemic pesticides, honestly, they're not good for the environment. So you have to just use them with caution. If you use them with caution, if you're using them indoors and your plants are not exposed to the environment, then all good. The environment won't take a loss. And if you happen to live in a place that doesn't have, a lot of pollinators, then you can actually get away with using this cautiously outdoors. Like this has literally taken a huge load out of my pest issues and reduced the pest pressures. I will highly recommend like the one that you spray as opposed to the granules because with the one that you spray, like this one, this particular brand is one that I will highly recommend. Once you spray it, like the effect doesn't last for long, but it is efficient enough to eradicate the pest issues. And these days, I don't even use it as much because it has just helped to eradicate the pest and keep the plant protected for a fair amount of time. So yes, babes, definitely try to incorporate systemic pesticides in a demure way in your collection. All right, babes, we have come to the end of today's video, and I really, really hope you found it. I really hope you found it useful. If you did, please like and subscribe. That's one of the ways that you can support this channel. And as usual, let's keep the conversation going in the comments. I'm really curious to know your thoughts on this topic and if you've ever experienced plant burnout. If you're currently even dealing with it right now, oh my God, let's kick in the comments. All right, dear. See you guys in the next video.